Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Past and Present with Allison Gilbert and her guests. My name is Andrew Engel. I'm Senior Programmer at Reimagine. Our mission is to help people of all backgrounds face adversity, loss, and mortality, and channel the hard stuff of life into meaningful action and growth. I'd like to thank For Grief. Their renewed support for this series is so appreciated, and a special shout out to Christina Sirio, who is joining us from For Grief on this call. I want to provide you just with one Zoom tip here. Note at the bottom of the screen that we have a live transcript function for those who need it. Just click on the CC button and you'll get some captions. The majority of us are zooming in from the United States, also known as Turtle Island by Native Americans and their allies. I'm in Nauset Land, otherwise known as Provincetown, and I ask you to join me in acknowledging Indigenous communities. In North America, their elders, both past and present. I'm stating this because it's a step to continue the process of dismantling the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism and white supremacy. I'm very interested in knowing where all of you are, so please put that in the chat. And there's a very helpful map, and perhaps Christina, you could put this in the chat if you haven't already. It's called native-land.ca, and you can check it out to learn about the locations of Indigenous people, past, present, and future. Please mark your calendars for September 29th for the next Past and Present. The focus is on BIPOC grief, and Allison's special guest is Tanish Hollins, who is a crime survivor who works passionately to bring the voices of other survivors to the center of community engagement and public policy. She serves as executive director of Californians for Safety and Justice. 2 years ago, Tanish moderated a table talk for Reimagine on ways to cultivate healing from trauma, and we're so delighted to have her back. Okay, it's now my pleasure to introduce Allison. Allison Gilbert is the author of numerous books, including Listen World, the forthcoming biography of Hearst newspaper columnist Elsie Robinson. It's going to be published by Basic Books Hachette in September. Her previous book, Past and Present, Keeping Memories of Loved Ones Alive, reveals creative ways to remember family and friends we never want to forget. Please follow Allison on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. She's everywhere as A. Gilbert Writer. And with that, it's my pleasure to hand this over to Allison Gilbert, who will introduce our guests.
Thank you so much, Andy. As always, I am always so honored to be here with you the last Thursday of every month. So thank you, Andy and Reimagine, and thank you For Grief. Because without For Grief, we also would not have this opportunity to be together. Before I introduce Heidi and her amazing mom, Gloria, these two women I have known for a long time. I can vouch for their credentials. I can vouch for their expertise, their heart, and their compassion. And today especially, I am floored by my good fortune to have them with us for a very personal reason. And I need to start where I am the most vulnerable and raw today. Every month I come here to you and I use my personal experiences and the books that I write and my expertise to ground our conversations and hopefully crack open a moment for all of us to be together and learn and share. Today, I'm coming to you as my community where I live has suffered an enormous tragedy. There may be some people in my town who are choosing to join us today. And if my voice cracks, it's because it's very personal. 3 young men who graduated from our local high school were involved in a horrific car accident just a few days ago. One of them died. One is still in the hospital, and one just got home. To say that this is a common occurrence would be stating the obvious, because we know car accidents happen and we know tragedies happen. Of course, when you know the boys, when they are dear friends that you have grown up feeding and have welcomed into your home your entire motherhood life, it feels different. And so knowing that not only do Heidi and Gloria have the expertise to talk about this from an academic sense, what was not put in their introduction material today, but I'm not speaking out of turn because they have spoken about this in the past, is that Gloria's son and Heidi's brother died in a car accident himself many, many years ago when Heidi was 20. So to me, the randomness of having Gloria and Heidi today, because they can speak to this tragedy through an oddly personal lens, is wonderfully, it's a gift. So the first thing I want to talk about today is sudden loss, inexplicable, horrific, out of nowhere loss. Because on Open to Hope, your platform, Heidi and Gloria, you have founded a platform, you have a cable TV show, you have articles, you have a podcast. Open to Hope is your platform that discusses and gives voice and lends support for all kinds of loss. But today, Heidi, I want to talk with you first. As we talked about, you know about sudden loss. Your mom knows about sudden loss. How can we help those of us who are on this call grapple with something that is unexpected?
Wow. Allison, thank you. That's a really tough question. As you know, when I was 20, my brother Scott, who was 17, and my cousin Matthew, who was 17, were both killed instantly in a car accident. So they were together. My cousin was driving, and suddenly my world was turned upside down because most young adults do not know people that young that have died. I mean, when my brother and cousin died, none of my friends had had that kind of loss. I felt very much like, wow, it turns your world upside down. It puts everything you ever believed into question. It's really scary to have somebody around your age die. And it was my brother. But so how do we help people? Is that the main? I think just being there as a support. You know, when things like this happen, most people, they don't know what to do, so they don't show up. Showing up and being there was really important for me. Acknowledging my loss was important. Sometimes I didn't want to talk about it. Sometimes I wanted to be distracted. Sometimes I wanted to go out and do things with people. But just knowing that they were there for me was really important. And acknowledging, you know, having a friend die is a big deal, because your friends, and when you're in your early 20s, your friends are your chosen family. And these boys were like brothers. And so this is a really, really significant loss for these kids. They're not, I know they're young adults, but to have this kind of situation happen right now. So just being there and letting them know, hey, this is a big deal. We're here for you. If you need anything, you know, we're here to be with you, to support you, to check in with you.
I remember, Gloria, in researching and preparing, as I do for every past and present conversation series that I do, I did a deep dive into the Open to Hope platform. And I noticed something that was a theme that just kind of bubbled up in different ways. You lost your son, Scott, in that crash, and parents do, of course, benefit from obvious support because, of course, people understand very clearly the horror of losing a child. What I was struck by on your Open to Hope platform was that friends and siblings, and by the way, these three young men all have siblings, get short shrift. And their grief is not attended to as readily. And I wonder if you can talk to the invisible grievers.
Well, I'll have to say, first of all, it is so incredibly devastating. A sudden loss like this, I didn't realize that I was actually teaching at the University of Rochester. I was actually an expert on grief and loss when my son was killed. When he was killed, I realized I had no idea. You cannot know what it's like to have this happen, even the sibling part. A sudden death is so biological as well as mental. We deal with the mental part, but it's like hitting a brick wall going 90 miles an hour. So that sudden impact is an incredible thing. So as you said, the community knows that parents have had a loss. But the siblings and friends kind of are on the side. The siblings, we got grocery bags full of notes. Heidi got, how many, Heidi?
I got one acknowledgement.
So it's a different matter today with the internet. So there'll be more kids talking back and forth through the internet. We were pre-internet. This is a good thing and a bad thing. It can feel intrusive for people where people make comments. One of the people that we dealt with, whose daughter was killed by a horse in Mexico, the mother said the problem was the whole community knew before we even got back from Mexico exactly what had happened. So this information is going out so fast for friends, family, parents, everybody to deal with this. It's a huge barrage coming in suddenly and at once. And I think what we all have to do is try to be calm, try to take a breath. If you're dealing with these family members and friends, don't feel like you have to tell them your story. That's one of the things that happens. We start telling them other stories. Like I just told you another story of something that happened in Mexico. Families don't want to hear that. The kids, they can't absorb it. Don't tell them your story. Just say you're sorry, take a breath and relax. You don't need to say anything. You just need to be present. They see you. They see you.
The one part of what you just said, Gloria, that I wanted to pause in your words, slow down, and I want to emphasize is something that you said and then Heidi said, that you as a grieving mom received a lot of support via those notes. And Heidi, having lost her brother, who was 17 when he died, and your cousin, received one. And that is something notable in terms of how a community may decide to show up for family members. And I wanted to invite you to help a community. How do we show up? How can a community embrace, love, hold on to, hold up, provide scaffolding? Is there a first step for what a community can do? Heidi?
Well,
Or-
I guess
yeah.
in my brother's case, and in many cases that we've heard from where this has happened, my brother was an athlete. He varsityed in 3 sports: football, baseball, and basketball. His team wore armbands. They planted a tree at the school. So they came together in ritual. And I think that was really important. They decorated his locker. There was a lot of things that they did at that time. And I think that was important because even if you didn't know Scott, you were impacted by his death. The kids in his school, the community at large, we grew up in a smaller town in upstate New York, and everybody was impacted on some level. So having some ritual, some places to acknowledge that he, to remember him and pay tribute to him was important for our community.
Yeah, I think the ritual is really important. And, after everything dies down, staying with it, these young men were not in high school. So Scott had a focal point to do it. So the community might want to think, people in the community might want to think of how they can create some kind of a focal point for kids who are out of college or out of high school. How can the community create a time, a date, what do the parents want? You've got, it's a touchy situation. I don't know who is driving the car at the time. You have a lot of things going on in communities that you have to think about. What do the parents want? What does the family want? I think you have to be careful that you don't move too quickly. There's time. There's time to move on this. We don't have to suddenly decide we've got to do this, we got to do that. There's time to think about what you want to do, and holding your community over time is important. It'll be important in a year when this happened. What are you going to do in a year to support this? Grief and loss has a long tail.
Well, Mom, you're also making a good point about what does the family want? Coming together with the family. I mean, like, one of the rituals that I love is coming together, with candles and just spontaneously sharing memories of Scott. But if the family's not on board, I wouldn't suggest that. But if they are, it's a great way to get together, the kids to get together and just share memories.
Let me ask you both a question. There's something about open to hope in what you say often. I don't know if it's a tagline or a motto, but I want to steal it, probably get it a little bit wrong. You guys can correct me, but it's something like this. If you need hope, until you get, well, no, let me see if I can actually get it like, if you lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own.
Right.
Let me get that again, and let me get it correct. If you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own. What does that mean? How do you lean on others for hope when you've lost it yourself? What does that mean?
It means that we're all exemplifiers. Anyone who's been through something like this, just the fact that we're standing, we're walking, we're matching our socks, we're getting out of bed, we're opening our eyes, we're finding somewhere, maybe starting with gratitude, that you can open your eyes. We're starting with the most basic thing, but we're here to show you that you can be happy again. And there are many people in the community. The ones who are going to be most helpful to these families are going to be the ones who've been through the trauma that will show up. And it won't be what they say. It will be looking at them. You're actually walking and you're talking and you're moving and you're smiling and you're there. Those exemplifiers are the most powerful.
Wow.
Well, like my mom said, when my brother died, it was really important for me to find people that were further down the road in their own grief journey so that I could hold on to them as lifelines and look at them, because I honestly did not think I would ever find hope again. And that's why we named our organization the Open to Hope Foundation, because we want people, we don't want to tell people to have hope because that will minimize their loss. We just want to remind people to be open to the idea that someday they may have hope again. And holding on to people that have been there, that have walked this walk, but that are not new in their grief was really important in my own journey to finding hope again.
Part of that is the community that Reimagine has shaped. Part of that is the community that Open to Hope has built through your many platforms. It is what For Grief, of course, is all about: helping people share, helping people express rage, anger, sadness, all of the ugliness. And I want to just pause for a moment. I know we're just 20 minutes in, and some people may have to dip in and dip out and go. And I want to just share something about logistics. This meeting is being recorded. If you find this to be too much for you right now, that's okay. We'll understand. You can get off the Zoom, check the recording later, and come back. We understand that. If you want to see what else Open to Hope has for you, what I appreciate so much, Gloria and Heidi, about your platform is that it's searchable so easily by type of loss. So if you go on to your cable TV show where you have all your recordings, if you are a widow, if you are a parent, if you are someone who has traumatic loss, whatever it is, I just don't think there's anything that you have missed is really my point. And so I feel like I want to stop and share how people can access, in terms of that community, your information, even when this podcast, or rather this conversation on Zoom, is over. So Open to Hope is on Facebook. Open to Hope is on Twitter. The Open to Hope Foundation is the handle on Instagram. And of course, there's the website. So if you do want to find these resources, not just now, which of course you would never do while we're talking. I know you guys do that, but after, these resources are available. And of course, the For Grief website too, and Facebook community pages as well. I'll go through those now, because my fear is that we are here now and you feel that there's some level of bubble wrap around you. My fear is that when the clock strikes 2 p.m. Eastern and we're done, you will all of a sudden feel alone. And I don't want that to happen. I will be a failure if that happens. So with For Grief, there's a For Grief community page on Facebook where you can join and talk to other people. Maybe there's something that's said here today, you want to continue that conversation. So that's the For Grief community. There's the For Grief page on Facebook, which is different. That's just getting information as opposed to participating in a conversation. And then there's For_Grief on Instagram. I'm sharing it with you just so when the clock strikes 2 o'clock Eastern or 11 o'clock Pacific, you all of a sudden feel that the ground is still there under your feet. Okay. Now that
Well,
I've
and I also want to just chime in for a minute, Allison, and say that
please.
you've done some very inspirational shows with us on parent loss, because unfortunately you had both your parents die at a relatively young age. And I think for those of you that are interested in looking at those and have had experience with parent loss, please chime, go to our site and look at Allison's shows.
And I wanted to say one thing about our site. It is free to you completely, and we don't even ask you to leave your email address.
I want to switch gears, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
Something struck me the other day that took something that was celebrity and headliney about the death of Olivia Newton-John.
Mhm.
Again, I warned everyone that I'm doing a sharp pivot. And I remember being at the exact conference where we all got to meet her.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But you guys both interviewed Olivia Newton-John. And I'm curious, when you heard about her death, sometimes when we hear about a celebrity passing, we remember our own grief. Somehow it's a trigger. And I'm wondering, I'll start, Heidi, maybe with you. What was it like meeting Olivia Newton-John, and what was your reaction when you heard that she had passed away?
Well, she was a wonderful, very generative person. And one of the things that I really connected with her on is that she did her, album and her songs in tribute to the death of her sister. So she raised awareness for sibling loss in a big way, which I really appreciated. And she was really an incredible person. Mom, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just that she will be missed. She was a
Yes.
lovely, lovely person, and it does touch your heart and makes you feel sad when some of those wonderful special beings leave us.
Well, it was so funny is not the right word. That's the word that came to my mind just now. It's not funny, but when I heard the news that she had died, I instantly recalled you and I began that same conference where you had interviewed her. And I was going on your platform, your website, Open to Hope, to go see if I can go find the archival interview that you did. And there, very smartly, you had put it right on your homepage. And so if anyone wants to see that conversation with Olivia Newton-John, I suggest that you go to the Open to Hope website. It's right on their homepage right now. I do want to go from Olivia Newton-John to something else that I did some research on, but I was confused by, and I thought maybe you can help explain it. What is a grief warrior?
Oh, a grief warrior. I think that's what we all are. Everybody trying to move forward, putting on that. Grief is work. Grief is hard work. And putting on that, saying, I can do it, you're going to get through, and arming up. And I think that's part of what, as exemplifiers, seeing people who are moving through a little bit further on than you makes you be able to put that on and brace up that you're going to be able to do it and you're going to get through, because sometimes you don't believe you are.
Heidi, anything to add to the grief warrior? I saw that phrase and I'm like, I want to be a grief warrior. That sounded like a good title.
I guess what my mother said is so true. Sometimes we don't know how we're going to do it. We just have to do it one day at a time or 1 hour at a time, and I certainly didn't know how I was going to survive after my brother died, or even if I wanted to. So you need to put on that warrior cape. You need to find peer support. You need to find resources like this podcast today. You need to lean on others until you can find your own hope, and it's a lot of work. Like my mom said, the sudden death of somebody is a psychological, emotional, and physical assault to your system, and please give yourself a lot of grace if you're grieving, because sometimes you'll wake up at, at 3 in the afternoon, you're in your bathrobe saying, I haven't done anything today. Well, you have done something. You're grieving and you're working through that. You've got your bathrobe on. Exactly, Mom. Exactly. So be very good to yourself during this time.
Hey, Allison, I love something that you did earlier. You gave people a hall pass. That's you said, if you want to leave. I want to say to everybody, hey, you got a hall pass. If you're in grief and loss, it can even be 5 years. If you want to walk out, if you want to do something, you've got a hall pass. You need to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
I still use my hall pass when my mom died in 1996. Is that allowed?
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
did use it? Yes.
I still use it.
Absolutely. Yes.
I'm joking, but there really is, to be quite honest, and really where my thought process was going, which is not to minimize what we're talking about, is that this is not time bound, is really my point, is that you don't just get a hall pass today or tomorrow. If your loved one died 10 years ago or 15 years ago and something is triggering and you miss that person, it's because you love them. And so my point is, there is no expiration date. Would you agree?
No expiration date on relationships. Thank goodness. I love every so often when my heart gets touched related to Scott. I love it. I love to feel that. The thing is, it can be as deep, but it doesn't last as long. That's the difference. You come back earlier, but remember the continuum. The more you've grieved, the more loss you've suffered, the more joy is on the other side, because there is that continuum.
I agree with my mom, and I created a class at Columbia University, which I teach, talking about how our losses impact us over our entire life course. like you said, Allison, things come up where you wish your mom was there. You wish your dad was there. I wish my brother and dad were there. You know, I mean, it does, we don't have a beginning and an ending, but your recovery is quicker and there are more places for joy in your life as you get further down the road.
I like to talk about the word A-N-D, that we can move on and remember. We can move on and keep the memory of our friend or our parent alive. We can move on and laugh, and we can cry when we need to. The and gives us permission to
Mhm.
do both, and hopefully feel, if there is the presence of, how can I laugh when my loved one died? That guilt that so many people feel. The and gives us the permission to kind of live this dual existence.
Mhm.
It's so important what you're saying. We can be grieving and enjoy in the very same day. You know, I mean, it's a really important thought. So thank you for putting it out there. It's super important. It's an important point.
I want to say thank you. I want to say about at the halfway mark, I am very good on time. We will be done at the top of the hour. That does not mean that the conversation has to end. I gave our community here today some ways of continuing the conversation. One way that I want to impose, or not really impose, that I want to suggest now, is while we have Heidi and Gloria with us today, a mother and daughter duo who are not just delightful, not just friends of mine, but preeminent grief experts, use this time. I urge you to put your questions in that chat. I have come with a host of questions, but if you get off this Zoom and you haven't asked Heidi or you haven't asked Gloria, whatever question might have brought you here today, I don't want you leaving this call feeling, I should have, or I ran out of time. This is your kind of headline warning that we'll be done at the top of the hour. And I want you to write your question, think about your question, and Christina, who will, wave her hand, will go through the chat and find your question, pluck it out. She will read it to Gloria or Heidi or me. This is your time. So while you're thinking about your question, I'm going to go ask my next question, which is, when you don't feel like it's possible to do that one step, to get out of bed, to put on that robe, what do you lean on when things feel that bleak? What can help you make that pot of coffee or make that phone call? What's that little tweak that you can do to give yourself the capacity to take that one step?
Wow, good question. I think that actually the best thing you can do is do what you want to do. Stay in bed till you're tired of it. When you get bored of it yourself, you will move. There's not a lot of choice after a loss. I was talking to somebody about it the other day. If you fall down on the floor and scream and yell and they put you in a mental hospital, they will let you out. There's not a lot of choice. So if you lay there, you will know that as a human being, you will know that you do need to get up now, but maybe it's not time for you yet. Maybe people should bring you soup and put blankets over you. Maybe you should ask them to do that. Maybe that'll be the step, or maybe you just lay there until someone finds you there. But people are naturally resilient and they have the strength and ability, and they will eventually move.
I guess what I would say from a sibling standpoint is that if I was in bed and didn't want to move, I would probably go on Facebook to TCF Sibs or The Sound of the Siblings.
I know it stands for the Compassionate Friends. Can you tell people what the Compassionate Friends are?
The Compassionate Friends is an organization for people that have lost siblings, children, or grandchildren. And they have two very big Facebook pages. One is called TCF Sibs, and then one is now a spinoff. It's called Sounds of the Siblings, where there's 10, I don't know, 5 or 10,000 minimum siblings. And I think I would go and look at the news feed because that would give me some support. I would not feel as alone. I would not feel like I'm going crazy. I would not feel like something's wrong with me. I would get validation and support for where I was in bed because there's other people on those sites that would be in bed with me.
I like that. Allison, I'll have to say one thing about what you're saying. I have a feeling that it's the people around me that see me in bed that are most concerned. They're wondering how to get me out of bed. Would be, I guess, that I would have. If I know that I am laying in bed and I just can't get up, I will get up eventually. You will get up eventually. But it's the people around that are wondering, what I can do.
Well, that's actually a really interesting question. It'll be my last one before I toss it over to Christina to go through the questions from those who are on this call. Again, as I ask Christina to look at the chat, please add your questions now while I'm asking Gloria this follow-up question. You said something very interesting, which is the person who is grieving may understand in their heart that they will get up off the floor, but it's harder potentially for the people to watch that, the people who love them. So the question that comes to my mind, and it harkens back to how we began this call today with the crisis that's happening in my community. How do you help those who are grieving? How can you be the best friend if you are concerned about someone who is in such pain? How can you, Heidi had said, show up. I take that to heart, to show up, to be there. What else do you feel is within our grasp to be useful?
I would say, particularly for family members and friends that are very close to these people, is to take care of yourself. Do it yourself and teach the world. Do it yourself. Take care of yourself. Drink water. Do what you need to do for yourself to show them that you're going to get through, that they're going to get through. And it's important to start with yourself, because I see so many times where people are, what can I do? I'm so needy. How can I help them? Rather than standing up and saying, I'm here. If you need me, I'm looking at you. You're taking care of yourself. I don't have to take care of you. I mean, it's incredible when you see people who are coming to grieving families and friends needy, and saying, how can I help you? When they're the ones that are needy. So step up, take care of yourself. Don't ask a lot of questions. Don't talk a lot. Just roam around. I mean, I had a pediatrician who was a very good friend of ours. I'd see him out in my yard walking around. He'd never even knock on the door. He just showed up. He'd show up every day to check and see how things looked. Maybe talk to a couple of my kids. He wasn't needy. He showed up.
I guess I would add to that, Mom, do not minimize the loss. Do not say, at least it was fast. At least they died suddenly. At least they're in a better place. At least. Acknowledge that our loss is horrific. It's difficult. This has rocked our world and it's significant. You can't fix it. And I think that's the hardest thing for people that want to help. They want to go in and fix it. Being with us and acknowledging, hey, this is hard. This is difficult. I'm here for you. This is a lot. That's a gift. Sibling loss sucks. And when somebody came up to me at the funeral and said that, I was like, thank you. Thank you for being real and acknowledging the situation here and not trying to minimize it.
Thank you for that. I'm going to pass the baton, the microphone, as we say, to Christina, who has been going through the chat. Again, if you have questions, another reminder to put them in the chat so you can use this time for you. You've shown up here for a reason. You mark the time on your calendar for a reason. So now is your opportunity to talk to Gloria and Heidi, two of the smartest, most well-versed grief experts I've come across. So use that opportunity today while we still have them for the next 20 minutes. Christina, what questions do we have?
We have one from a widow who says she's struggling with lonely evenings after work. She's looking for help of some sort, but not really sure, and doesn't want to lie and can't lie in bed all day because she has to go to work.
Mhm. You want me to address that?
Yes,
My
yeah, of
husband
course.
who have died a couple of years ago, Heidi's dad, after 60 years of marriage. Loneliness is a huge issue. In fact, I'm writing a book about it right now called Open to Love, Fearless Dating After 60. So loneliness is huge. Some of the things that I've heard people do in the evening, I do think you have to plan it. One of the people that I've dealt with like to play ping pong and ask friends to come over in the evening 3 days a week to play ping pong. Now, I don't know, if you have a sport, if you like to knit, if you like to sew, or if you like to read, book clubs, reaching out, trying to maybe have people come up to your house, plan something, because loneliness is huge. And you do have to reach out and ask for the support that you need, particularly for widows. I think that's important to ask for help and support. But I want to say you're not alone in this loneliness. But one of the things that I think you can go to is Soaring Spirits Foundation online. Michelle Neff Hernandez is the founder of it. She is a widow. They have huge online things. You can do chats. You can do Camp Widow. I go to her conferences, which she does around Canada and in the United States. But online, you can meet new friends. We know two things about grief and loss. One is peer support is highly important. And there are a huge amount of peers for you at the Soaring Spirits Foundation. And there may be some groups in your community that you can reach out to. I know it takes an effort, but a little bit at a time, just maybe going on her site and just investigating it. But you do peer support. And the other thing is information. We need information about how we proceed in life without that person we've been with and how other people have done it. So good luck to you. And there is hope and help. And you're not alone. I mean, loneliness is a huge issue.
Yeah, our heart definitely goes out to you. It was been really hard for my mom, and we've seen it many, many times with other people. And, nights are hard because you're used to getting home from work and, looking at your spouse and talking about your day and maybe watching a show together. It's lonely. So we want to acknowledge and validate that. And like my mom said, Soaring Spirits is incredible because there's so many widows out there that'll be able to really identify with what you're going through right now and support you.
Thank you,
So thank you.
Christina. Yeah. Is there another question, Christina?
Yeah. Another listener lost her mom and is struggling to maintain her relationship with her siblings. She also feels she's the only one responsible enough to handle the estate, the funeral, etc. So do you have any advice on sibling relationships following the loss of a parent?
What do you think?
That should be good for you.
Yeah, I was gonna
This
say,
is
Heidi,
this
this
is
is yours.
Allison might need to chime in on this too, because she is an expert on parent loss and lost her parents at a relatively young age. Yes, the sibling dynamic is really tough because when a family member dies, it changes your role in the family. It shifts all the sibling stuff. So, it's like, who are we now without our parent in this family? I'm trying to think of what good advice. Allison, what would you say? Because you've been there.
Yeah, I would say something that is based on my reality when my mom passed away and then my dad passed away. My brother and I love each other deeply, and we both loved our parents. All that is positive. However, even the closest of siblings may not be on the same page when it comes to how we grieve.
Mhm.
So don't necessarily expect that your siblings will be the rocks that you may want. Don't expect your siblings to want to potentially honor a death anniversary or a wedding anniversary or a birthday. They may not be interested in marking the calendar the same way you are. So I would just approach siblings when it comes to grief almost like you're feeling out strangers in uncharted territory. You don't know how your siblings will react, and it's better not to assume and then chafe a relationship perhaps any further. So I would approach those relationships as if they are new, because you are in a new part of your time together navigating the loss of a parent. So that's what immediately comes to
Mhm.
mind.
Can I chime in with one more thing? Because when my husband passed away, I happened to be fiscally pretty responsible myself and understood all of the estate information. So I don't think it's been a large burden for the girls. Heidi can talk to how she's felt about it. But I would say one of the things that I heard her say was she's in charge of the estate. That is very, very dicey. It's very, very difficult. And as you know, it's a huge amount of information to settle estates nowadays. It's very complicated. And I would suggest to you that you use professionals as much as you can, even if you're not exactly, you don't want to pay more than you have to. But I would say to my siblings, my accountant says this, my lawyer says this, do not use it wherever you can put it off to the professional voice, do it, because you're going to take it on. I mean, if you're settling houses, doing furniture,
Mhm.
wherever you can get professional voices and other people, even friends, family, anybody that you can bring in another voice. Oh, this is the way John Jones did it. This is how we tagged the furniture and the family went in and they dealt with it this way. Ask people, get information, find out how other people have done it, and then use them to offset some of the pressure on you as the person who's doing the estate. It's tricky, and God bless you on that one.
You're making a good point, Mom, because we've seen a lot of families, a lot of siblings become estranged over money issues after the death of a parent. I like what you're saying, the advice you're giving.
I
And Grandma Jones's rocking chair. I mean, really,
Mhm.
it's worth it.
I
My husband used to say you can buy antiques.
I think it's really smart to take something that is so personal and try to have some distance. So
Yeah.
what you're talking about is taking something that is so intimate and trying to create some level of space. And I think that's brilliant. Christina, what else do you have?
We have one question about grieving the loss of someone who's still living. One listener is caring for her husband with memory loss and is just struggling to continue juggling everything in her regular life while still mourning the person that she used to be married to.
Mhm.
Apparently, Maria Shriver wrote a book about this when this same situation happened to her. So I would suggest getting it. But I would think, you're not, I like that you're not minimizing this, because it's like two deaths, the death of the person that you once knew, and then the physical death. So you have had a significant loss, and just to get support around that and realize, as you're saying, that it is very significant. The person that you loved and that you once knew is gone.
Mhm.
Well, it's that validation piece that you were talking
Mhm.
about before that comes into a play down many avenues of these paths, correct? I mean, the validation is important. I wanted to, I brought something with me today that I wanted to get your take on, but it's a bit of a show and tell. So let me just
Love
go
it.
grab it for a second. Hold on. So Andy, when he introduced me, talked about this new book that I have coming out next month, and it's a biography. And if people know my work, that's a big pivot for me. I haven't written a biography before. I've written about grief and loss before, but not a biography. So, it's very exciting and nerve-wracking and all those kind of good things. And one question that I keep getting is, how did you find out about Elsie Robinson, the subject of my biography? Well, it has to do with grief and death and loss. So after my mother died, we've been talking about losing my parents as a young adult. My brother and I went to, and this is what reminded me that I brought the show and tell, when we were talking about packing up our belongings and the estate and things like that. I went back to my childhood home, and my job that particular day was to take care of her books and pack them up. And inside one of my mother's books fluttered out a piece of paper. Just I was going through the books, it fluttered out, and I have it. I brought it today. Can you guys see that it's that onion skin paper, that
Yeah,
batch
yeah.
onion skin paper?
Mhm.
Well, this is very old, likely from 1956 is when my mom typed out this poem. And it was a poem about grief. And it was attributed to someone named Elsie Robinson. And we
Wow.
had no idea who that was. And that's what set me down this course. And she was tough love. She was not gonna hold your hand forever, Elsie Robinson, not gonna hold your hand forever. It's like that moonstruck, snap out of it. Like she was very much of that vein. And I wanted to ask you a question pertaining to one section of this poem to get your take on it, which is, how soon can we hope? We've been talking about hope. How soon can we hope that those who are grieving can embrace the idea that the pain of loss is worth having, that the love we had was worth the price that came with a death? And let me read you this part. And it's called Pain by Elsie Robinson. She says, pain is part of growth. The more we grow, the more we feel. The more we feel, the more we suffer. For if we feel, sorry, I misspoke because I'm not wearing my glasses. Hold on. You know what? Where are my glasses? Here they are. Stand by. Okay, sorry about that. All right. Pain is part of growth. The more we grow, the more we feel. The more we feel, the more we suffer. For if we are able to feel beauty, we must also feel the lack of it. And then it goes on and on. To have felt love and honor, courage and ecstasy is worth any price. To have felt deeply is worth anything it cost. I wonder when we can feel that way. When are we able to appreciate that we had a love worth missing? When does that come into play, do you think?
The second my brother died. I am who I am today because he was on the earth. If he had never been here, I would be a different person. And I always say, while I'm poor for having lost him, I'm so much richer for having known him for 17 years. We're profoundly changed by people in our lives. None of us would be who we are today if we hadn't known the people in our lives that are now no longer here.
It's hard. It's hard because, of course, when you're in the throes of grief, maybe one of the last feelings you accept is gratitude. So I'm wondering, Gloria, from your perspective, was that a hard concept to actually feel?
I think it took years. I think grief has a long tail, grief and loss. I mean, there's research looking at widows saying after 4 years, they start to really, get at those kind of feelings. I almost think it takes 8 years for a child. It is a very hard, long, arduous process. There are beauties in between. There are people who help. There are things that happen. You do get better. You get better and better And I want to say the first year is really, really difficult, particularly with the loss of a child, because you, that first year, you're just frozen. Second year, you start thawing out and it's even worse because then you start to deal with it all. It's a hard process. Third year, you're looking better. Fourth year, you're looking better. Things are getting better. Things are getting better. Things are getting better. But to have the kind of perspective you're talking about right now, I am 83 years old, and I will tell you, I have it. It is a fabulous, beautiful world. I understand the whole world. I've lost a child, I've lost a spouse, and I know exactly what she's talking about. But it's a long trail.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for that, Gloria and Heidi. We have 5 minutes left, and that is my cue to remind everybody how they can stay in touch with Heidi and Gloria. So back on with my glasses. So Open to Hope is on Facebook. Open to Hope is on Twitter. Open to Hope Foundation is on Instagram. And of course, there is a podcast. There is a cable TV show. There are resources on the Open to Hope website. So just because we are concluding in 4 minutes, that doesn't mean the expertise and the wisdom that come with this fabulous mother-daughter duo is out of touch forever. You can stay in touch. For me, you can find everything else. Be in touch with me too. Allison at AllisonGilbert.com. I would love to hear from you. For Grief, of course, I mentioned to you before, it has a Facebook page where you can talk to each other. If something on this call made you feel stronger, maybe it upset you, maybe something we said here you disagree with, that's okay. Let us know so we can continue the conversation. Christina, before we log off in 3 minutes, is there one last question that we can get to Gloria and Heidi in like a lightning round?
Yes. Can you acknowledge or comment on how grief reappears at milestone times or special events like weddings or new births in the family?
Yeah, anniversary reactions, very big. The thing is, you will have them. Sometimes you will think about them before, and it's not as bad as on the day. Try to remember it's just one day when these reactions happen. Be prepared, and you will get through it. You'll get through it.
And you also might want to do little things in memory and in tribute of the person that died on those days. Some people wear little things at their weddings for their brothers and sisters or whoever died, etc. And just have grace with yourself, because these things appear throughout your life course, and you will be connected with the people that you've loved and lost forever in a new and different way.
I would say, to add on to what Gloria, you had said before, which is to have agency, to be proactive, to do things that you need, to take control. That agency piece, so much about loss is out of our control. That in many ways is why it's so painful, is that because we feel powerless. As soon as you wrest some of that control back, as soon as you decide that you have a say in how your future goes, that you can determine how you spend tonight and tomorrow and next week, there comes a power that becomes incredibly healing. That to me is the gift. That's where the and comes in. The and gives you that kind of like that diving board, that springboard that allows you to move forward. It doesn't mean you're leaving your pain behind. It's that and. But the agency piece is how we do that. And we can take the reins and keep the memory of our loved ones alive. That job is ours to do. And we can do it alone if we want privacy, and we can do it in community, whether it's with Open to Hope or Reimagine or For Grief. So I just want to say thank you for joining us today. We are here the last Thursday of every month. And I'm grateful that I was able to start with something so personal today. Thank you for giving me that freedom. And Heidi and Gloria, I'm honored to be sharing this hour with you. So thank you.
Thank you, and God bless to your community.
Thanks.
Yes, and you know that if you've lost hope, please lean on all of ours until you find your own. You're not alone. We've been there. Lean on someone that's further along in your journey. Take care, and thank you for having us on. Thank you for showing up today in this space.
Thanks, everybody.